Welcome to Dear Romance Writer, where three writers who always deliver happily ever afters offer questionable advice for all of your relationship, work, and life problems. I'm Roan Parrish.
And I'm Zio Axelrod. Avery is gone this week on vacation, and she's probably laughing at us from some warm, sunny, beachy place, but whatevs. We're here with the fabulous Kilby Blades, so I think we have the better end of that deal.
Totally.
Welcome, Kilby.
Hello.
Tell our listeners who you are, why you're so fabulous, and all the things.
So I'm Kilby. I write romance and women's fiction, and I'm fabulous because I write about things that nobody else is writing about, and I take strange angles and strange things that nobody else is doing. So I write a lot of things that are against type. Like I write billionaires, but a lot of my billionaires are women.
Nice.
And I write a lot of grumpy sunshine, but where the heroine is grumpy, not the hero. So I write a lot of things that romance readers love, but I do them in a little bit of a different way.
Little twist. I love it.
Little twist.
And she's a fabulous, fabulous writer. So if you guys have not read Kilby, you really should. Thank you for being with us today.
I'm excited.
Yeah, I just saw Kilby at Book Bonanza last weekend, so that's why I sound like a little bit like Barry White or whatever today.
It was a lot.
It was a lot.
I haven't completely recovered, but it was really wonderful. It was my first Book Bonanza, and people tell you, it's the biggest one. It's a lot of people, and you're going to feel overwhelmed.
Yeah.
And I did, but in a really, really great way.
Yeah, it was just
probably in the
overwhelmingly
best
positive.
way.
Yeah.
Yes, it was overwhelmingly positive.
Really, really sweet. It was just like for the first signing after 2.5 years of not doing any signings, it was a lot. So maybe I should have started something smaller, but it was great. So hopefully I can go back. Anyway, let's we get into today's letter.
Yes. So today's letter is yay from one of you, our lovely listeners. We love giving our advice or our strong opinions about total strangers. That's fun because you can be meaner. But really, we started this podcast because we were excited to hear from you all. So thank you so much to our letter writer for the day. It's not signed, so wherever you are, we hope you're listening. All right, so today's letter. Dear romance writers, what's your advice to someone on how to best deal with their mental health if their resources are limited or non-existent at the moment? Meaning there's no access to medicine or therapy, etc., due to financial and accessibility factors. Thank you.
That's a great question.
Yeah. So hard, so important.
Yeah. I think we're in an interesting time right now because, and there's, we've talked about this a little bit before. Some of the ads that you see on TikTok and Instagram and Facebook are like, online mental health services and even like prescription medication and stuff like that online without ever really talking to anyone, which, I have opinions about that. But I do think that if one small, I don't want to say good thing, but positive sort of thing that came out of the whole pandemic was that a lot of resources were made available online that they were online before, but kind of like in piecemeal, I think virtual doctor appointments and virtual therapy appointments really blossomed during the pandemic because people were struggling. People are still struggling. And I think that I was worried that some of those resources would go away, when everything opened up a little bit again. But it seems like more things are coming online, which is, I think, fantastic. If you can't get out or if you don't have a lot of money to spend on like individual office visits and things like that. So there are a lot of online resources. I just think, I wish there were, and maybe you guys know a place where they're sort of vetted. Because that's my concern is that everyone is trying to like peddle medicine now or peddle therapy, and we don't really know what their qualifications are.
Right.
So
yeah, I think that for me it's helpful to take this in two pieces. One is the access issue, and the other is the money issue, because I think that those have different answers. These all like a blanket statement that we are not doctors or medical professionals. But I feel like one of the things that has like many of us who are queer or women or people of color or whatever are like quite used to the like needing to navigate non-official systems of receiving care because we and many people we know do not have those resources or access to those things. So
That's true.
this depends on where you live, state to state. There are like many different resources. And one thing that we can do is we'll go look for some links to put in the show notes here. But
Oh, yeah, great idea.
the money issue, like the no access to money thing, it's so hard. Almost no insurance has good medical health coverage. Medicaid is great for some things, but there is a huge amount of paperwork, phone calling, access to computers, or like they still use a fax machine. I know because my sweetie just applied to Medicare last week and they were like, cool, after spending 3 hours on the phone with you, meaning you can't have a job that you just like call it in your lunch hour, we now need you to fax these resources. And she was like, cool, no one has a fax machine, like not even the library has a fax machine, and then you have to pay to like e-fax a thing where they fake fax. Anyway, like Medicaid is of course the first thing to check out, but it is not without its trials to navigate, both in terms of like time, money, accessibility, etc. One thing I know about Philly, and I'm not sure where this letter writer is coming from, is that a lot of library branches have special days that people who are really knowledgeable about navigating those kind of systems have like a happy hour or an open like office hours kind of thing. And you can go in, like just walk in for free and go chat with that person and be like, here's what I'm trying to do. Here are the resources I don't have. Like, which ones can the library help me with? Often they can like send you to a branch that does have a fax machine, or they can make phone calls for you. They can connect you with people who can translate if like language is a barrier for you, etc. So I'm not sure what things look like, letter writer, in your state, or if you're even in the US, you don't say, but definitely I would say like first thing for the money part is like check out what free resources you can find. And I would start with libraries, Planned Parenthood, which even though you might not be looking for like reproductive health, they have a huge number of resources, and a lot of people coming from those kinds of backgrounds who can connect you with people. If you have access to like a school, either like one of your kids' schools or a public university or something like that, they have libraries as well. So I would check out like as many community center places for resources as you can find, and see if for something like Medicaid, which you can get even if you're unemployed, see if you can kind of get some help like stair stepping up to doing that. That would be my first suggestion for the not having money part.
Yeah, I will echo that as well. So I work in the nonprofit space, and I would recommend going to your local community foundation, because your community foundation will know about all of the nonprofits that operate in your area. And I've been on the board of nonprofits that work in free and sliding scale health services. Of course, it depends on where you live and sort of what the overall landscape where you live is, but there are absolutely nonprofits that provide free and sliding scale mental health services. And sliding scale can be like, hey, I can afford to pay $10, so technically you're a paid client, but they can still work with you. And I would say that I'm seeing in the nonprofit sector, organizations stepping up in a big way in recognition of the fact that we're going through sort of a worldwide financial crisis, and that there are going to be services that folks, don't have as much money for. So I see the nonprofit space gearing up for that. Absolutely.
Nothing like having a worldwide financial crisis and a worldwide mental health crisis at the same time.
At the same time.
Yeah, it's almost like they're related.
Yeah, I wonder.
Yeah, but I empathize with that, and I'll also just echo the idea that my sister is a mental health professional, so it's a real professional. And like, yes, to echo what Zio said, if you are looking for mental health help, like, yes, the goal should absolutely be to find a professional who is trained and can, who's going to be the person who's very well equipped to help you. But at the same time, my belief is that mental health support comes in systems, right? So a mental health professional might be part of the equation, but there also might be other people in your life who uplift you and who are good for your mental health. So speaking of book bonanza, I ran into some friends this past weekend who are people who are just, they're really, really good for my mental health.
Yeah,
And
yeah,
I thought, like I need to spend more time with these people because they really lift me up. So I wonder
yeah.
whether there's a way to find those things, whether it's a pet, whether it's anything. Like I'm looking at Zio's desk, and Zio has the same hedgehog that I have at home. My hedgehog's name is Hedgie, and like there's no explanation for why, but I love Hedgie. Hanging out with Hedgie makes me feel really, really good. I love Hedgie. Hedgie is good for my mental health, right?
Yeah.
So how can you find all the things in your life that are good for your mental health, and find ways to just give yourself more of that?
Yeah, and there's also like support groups, people who get together who are dealing with the same issues. Just talking things out sometimes with people who are going through the same thing can be so helpful. We had, I think, a lot of us authors at this event were saying the same thing, like, "Oh my gosh, this is so overwhelming. Oh my gosh, I haven't done this in so long. I feel like a newbie." Like we were all saying the same thing, but it made me feel better because we were all experiencing it together. So I didn't feel like I was alone. And I think that's a huge bonus when you're in a group of people who understand what you're going through and can empathize with you. So, yeah.
Yeah. I was thinking, Kilby, while you were talking about like how we all have our things that are coping mechanisms that we develop to deal with mental health stuff. And I, a few summers ago, like was unmedicated and knew that I should be, but was like really scared to get on medicine and having horrible panic attacks. It was a terrible, terrible summer. But it was also the summer that I fell in love with propagating succulents because I would drive to any garden store. I would like make a loop of them on my Google Maps, and I would go to like 6 garden stores in a row, like everything from your crappy, like Lowe's in the city to like New Jersey farms, garden stands, whatever. And I
Right.
would pick up those little succulent bits off the ground and like out of the pot. And I would put them in my pockets and take them home, like not hurting the plant, just like ones that had fallen off.
Right.
And I would take them home, and I lived in this tiny 3rd floor walk up, and I would put them in like little dishes on my old, like 2 windows that I had. And for some reason, I found this like deeply soothing, and watching the tiny whiskers come out of these little succulent things, like it's such a cliche, but I was like, they are healing themselves. Like they fell off, they were forgotten, they were left over, they were just gonna go in the trash, but they had all this potential. And like I took them, and I'm giving them a home, and I'm giving them the conditions that they need. And once I do that, even though they look like nothing, they grow roots and they find their resources and they care for themselves. And like saying it now, years later, looking back on it, it is so clear that I was like desperately trying to care for myself. And the only way that I could think to do it was to care for these like garbage pieces of plants, and but like little by little watching them, I was like, yeah, this is what you do. You find the thing that you need. Like these little nuggets need air and water. That's all they need.
Yeah.
But if they don't get it, they die.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
it's simple, but the fact that they can't get it themselves means that there's this like it broke my heart, because I was like, they could live, they could all become big thriving plants, but like they don't get a chance. They're just stuck there in the fucking Lowe's cash pot, like they're just gonna get tossed away. And I think that sorry, I'm rambling, but the sense of like clearly looking at another living thing and seeing that you have the power to meet its needs teaches you, or it taught me anyway, like how to look at myself as a living thing and meet my own needs. And like, could I cure my panic attacks on my own? No, I got therapy. I mean, I got medication. Did I get it from a doctor? No, I called a friend who I knew could prescribe medication. I told them I was having panic attacks, and they were like, I'm going to write you a prescription until you can see a doctor, because you're obviously not in a state to do it now. Like that was an unofficial channel, and I was lucky enough to know someone who could write a prescription, and not everyone does. But I felt like I really taught myself how to be like, what are the simple things I need? Like, what are my air and water? And then like, what's the simplest step that I can do to try to get it? And I'm being vague because of course, like depending on what mental health things you're looking for and what the barriers are, it's going to change. But I find it actually like quite calming somehow to find like, what is, if you break it down to its most basic component parts, like what's the simplest action that you could take to try to get something going. And once, for me anyway, once I do like one little piece, it's a little bit easier to do the next one and the next one and the next one. And so I love the idea of like, go to community centers, look up where the resources are. And then even if you don't go find them today, maybe tomorrow or next week. Or you could like ask your sister. My sister makes my phone calls because I cannot make phone calls. It's like a problem. But yeah, this is all to say that like little steps, they may not like give you all your mental health resources, but they can kind of set you on a path where your habit is looking for what you need and giving it to yourself. And I find that a lot of the extra noise, like maybe not my main mental health problems, but a lot of the kind of the static, the white noise, the other stuff that's like buzzing in there that's unpleasant, if I can dial that down by like taking care of basic things, it just like mitigates the discomfort enough that at least it's only my mental health problems. So I think that like the real basic kind of like drink water, eat food, get sleep, pet a living thing, hug a friend or a family member, like they sound so simple and so silly, but they actually can sort of stabilize you a little bit until you can get to those resources. So I wouldn't underestimate them if you can get those.
Yeah. I mean, self-care has become like a GIF, like you see GIFs on Giphy that are like self-care, but it's a real thing. It's like a real thing. And I think that I mean, I'm glad that it's normalized. I just say that. I'm glad it's normalized.
Yeah. And I just wanted to add quickly, there are a couple of other proven things. So we know that exercise helps endorphins. And also, I forget what it's called. There's a whole school of thought about how you should make bodily contact with the earth every day. Like there are all these people who are like, go walk in the grass barefoot. You need to touch the earth. But there's science around how actually touching the earth like helps us from a sort of like mental health perspective. So I have started doing that. I've started taking my shoes off and walking around my backyard, which is not that big. So it's like I'm walking around in circles, that my feet are touching the earth. And there is something tremendously calming about that.
Wow. Okay, I'll have to try that. I don't have any grass, but I'll find something. So this actually gets me thinking about our chat of the day, which is along the same lines about how difficult it can be in the world we live in right now with everything going on, with all the bad news and the slingshotting the planet into the sun. But my question is, what are your tips and your tricks to working and living and loving when everything can seem really, really grim, especially right now?
I do what I would imagine that many of your listeners do, which is I really lose myself in stories. And the interesting thing about that is that not all of the stories that I consume are like lighthearted stories. I'm not necessarily the person who's going to go read the super lighthearted rom-com. I read a lot of post-apocalyptic dystopia. I watch a lot of the true crime murder shows, and they're
Oh, you're one
really
of those people.
awful. I am. I'm one of those people. I finished one. I finished The Girl in the Picture yesterday, and somebody else recommended one to me that's on HBO, and I've been sort of trying to figure out, like, why do I watch these? And I think it's because even though they're really awful, to me, I think it gives me that sense of like awful things happen in the world all the time, but there are people who care about them. Like, if you watch The Girl in the Picture, like it's all about, this family, and there was a mother and a son, and there was this awful man around them. But like there were all of these people who cared enough about them to try to figure out their case for like 30 years.
Yeah.
And I find that when I watch those stories, it's like that Mr. Rogers quote, like anytime there's something terrible happening, look around for the helpers. They're always helpers. So I think I get something out of watching stories like that it's like, it lets me sort of process that terrible things are happening, but it also usually lets me see, bad people get their comeuppance, which is also satisfying in its own way.
Right. Yeah.
So I think I just consume all kinds of stories and, television, movies, and just trying to understand my own humanity through going on a journey of understanding of other people, understanding their own humanity.
I know Rowan's a true crime person as well.
Yeah, I mean, for me, it's like horror movies and weed, basically, and the horror movies, or including like true crime. My girlfriend and I are obsessed with this show called Something Bit Me, which is like each episode is two intercut, like horrifying stories of people who were in nature and something bit them. Last night we watched one where one
That
person
would
got
terrify
bit.
me. That is a
Oh
horror
my
movie.
God.
Terrifying.
They're terrifying. Last night it was like one person got bit by a rattlesnake, someone else got bit by and dragged underwater by a hippo. And they're intercut stories.
Oh my
So
God.
all that kind of horror. And I think what's really interesting about what you were saying, Kilby, is I feel the same way. Like when I'm really anxious or the world seems extremely helpless, I never want to watch like super light, funny things, because not that I think there's anything wrong with it, it's just not what my brain requires. And I think that I've always been a horror fan, but I think that like in the pandemic, horror to me has been a similar boon, because it's like there is darkness all around all the time, and somehow when I'm watching happy things, even if I enjoy them, I'm like, the darkness is being edited out here, or like the horror that is lurking below the surface in a like inequity of systems or abuse or whatever the thing is. It's like, I know it's there. We all know it's there, but in this, it is not present. So I feel like I'm being lied to. And that's not what my brain wants when I'm anxious. Like actually what I'm desperate for is to be around other like-minded people who are like, yeah, it's fucking bad. We agree. We're all,
Right.
you're not overreacting. And watching horror is like, those movies are the people who are like, oh no, it's bad. We agree. So it's like watching a piece of media that it's not celebrating the bad things that happen at all. For me, it's really about showing like people's strength and tenacity, and that maybe this person in this movie is fighting like an alien shark that rips you to pieces with its mind, and you're only fighting realistic denial of your human rights. But like, it's the same. And these pieces of media to me are saying like, we see you, we know how fucked up this is, and we are making stories that you can escape into that don't pull the wool over how fucked up it is. And I just find that immensely calming, and kind of like what you were saying with true crime, like looking for the helpers. I love watching the people in these movies who are like gonna make it out alive, and it feels triumphal. And then I think the weed is like pretty self-explanatory.
I love the way that you put that. I feel like you just explained to me something about myself that I didn't see in that way, because I agree with that completely. And it made me think of this term that's sort of new to me, this toxic positivity, where, like when you're feeling, when you are feeling all of the feels about things that are happening, how utterly unhelpful it is to like bring in this sort of notion that like we should somehow be trying to like reverse it or pull ourselves out of it. Like it's not helpful, right, to a lot of people. And I think it's also not helpful to me. And I the other word that came to mind as you were talking was just the word like validating. Like I said, I read a lot of post-apocalyptic dystopia, and then the pandemic happened. And it was funny because in the like prepper community, there was a lot of like, yeah, we knew this was going to happen, right? Like we knew this was going to happen, and we are ready for this moment because we have been like, because we have been looking around society, and like we realize like the pandemic is going to happen, and like nobody's preparing for it, and the governments don't have themselves together, and all these sort of things. So I agree with you. There is something, for my personality type that's affirming about sort of watching media that talks about what's really going on. And my other reflection lately has been that a lot of things that had been considered post-apocalyptic dystopia are sort of like present-day dystopia. Like if you watch The Handmaid's Tale, Handmaid's Tale does not feel post-apocalyptic. Or if you watch, there was a movie with Lakeith Stanfield called Sorry to Bother You.
Sorry to Bother You, yeah.
And it got really bad reviews.
Which I don't understand.
Which I don't understand, because I think people didn't understand how present day it was, and they weren't really looking at it through the spectacle of how present day it was. Yeah.
I was at he came to Philly for like a screening and did a talk after the movie, and it was an interesting interaction between him and the audience, because the audience, I'm not sure if the audience was the target audience for that film. It was very like frat boy. So some of the questions were very interesting. But if you haven't seen that film, it's called Sorry to Bother You. Came out about 5 years ago, something like that. Check it out. For me though, it's interesting listening to you guys talk about your horror and your dystopia. It depends on what is pushing me over the edge. If it's a personal issue, I go for soft and fluffy. I watch Heartstopper like for the 50 billionth time or something like that. If it's like the world is making me angry, that's when I reach for my angry things. And it's mostly music in that case. I'll listen to like Tool, you know what I mean, or something like really rough. Um, I like horror, but I like psychological thrillers more, I think. So maybe I should watch more of those. Maybe I'm missing a piece of self-care.
Well, I think that's such a good point though, Zio, that like you can want different things based on like what kind of
Yeah.
horrible is going on. I think that
Yeah.
that's true of me also, actually, now that you say that. When it's something that's like personal and sad, I do want things that are a little bit fluffier. And when
Yeah.
it is the world or like other people, I want to rage.
You want to watch people kill things.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So honestly, I'm still thinking about that hippo. I'm still thinking of being dragged
I
down by a hippo,
know.
and that sounds absolutely terrifying.
I don't know if I can watch
Dude,
that.
it bit her knee and it went from the top of her thigh to mid shin. It was just like ripped. Anyway, it's very graphic. They show pictures of the actual wounds. So anyone
Oh
who's
my
not into that,
gosh.
don't do this.
Nah.
But if you're interested in like things that will kill you, as if I needed any more reasons never to leave the house. But it has the same effect where I'm like, I'm going to pay attention, because someday if I'm in this situation, then I'll know what to do. Whereas like,
Right.
I don't remember like a movie I watched 2 nights ago. There's no, if I'm hiking and I got bit by a snake, I'll be like, fuck my life. I know that at one point for 30 minutes, I knew what to do to save my life, but now it's gone.
Yeah. It's funny that Kilby's advice earlier was go stand on some grass, and you're like, and things will bite you and kill you. I'm like, which is it? Do I go to nature, or is nature trying to get me? No, it's
both. It's always both. But that's also speaking of, this reminds me of our quest, like more of our question about and how to deal with mental health stuff. And I think like the best advice always that I get from people is like that everyone's thing is different. And so if listening to us talk about like watching horror movies or listening to Tool or like, you know, doing all this, if that's not your vibe, then disregard it, and like, but find the thing, like Kilby was saying, that is good for your mental health or the people. And sometimes it might surprise you what it is. Like I get into these I'll go down these holes and I want to like learn everything about a topic, and I have no idea why like it just came across my world. You know, you like see something online or you see something in an advertisement, like whatever prompts these thoughts. But inevitably, as I go down the hole, something is relevant. Like I do find some piece of a thing, even if I'm like looking up gardening stuff, because I am very into gardening, like there will be something that feels really necessary. And my brain, I mean, this is magical thinking, I know, but like my brain is like this nugget. This is the reason why your brain sent you on this journey. And I find that there's something very, like, do I believe that there is a greater plan? Not really. That's just my personal thing, whatever. But in these moments, it's useful for my brain to believe that there is a bigger plan, and it's like one that's about me. It's not about like someone else it's not fate, but it's like, oh, this is the piece of treasure that my brain sent me down this path to find. Now I have recovered it and I've accomplished something. And there's something extremely soothing to me about that loop of like information finding and then like deciding what the piece is. So like I use that example. Brain Quest, yeah. It's just kind of weird, but like maybe it's your thing. My girlfriend loves playing this game where she's like a werewolf who kills Nazis. And sometimes when she's in a really bad mood, she will play this game and feel way better, because she's like, yeah, I mean, it turns out it's really good for my mental health to like visibly murder Nazis. Makes me feel great. And I'm like, get it. That's great. So like whatever your thing is, it doesn't matter if it's silly or if it's like weird. You don't even have to admit it to anybody ever, but like there are probably those things out there that every time you do them, you're like, oh yeah, that worked for a little while. That was great. And like it could be masturbation, it could be taking a bath, it could be doing really hard like weightlifting. It doesn't matter what the thing is, but I feel like if you just try enough different things, eventually you do sort of, they stick. Like those things that are useful to you kind of stick like burrs, and you're like, oh, that was a good one, I'm going to remember for next time.
That's like your advice that you often give about dating yourself. This is sort of like dating yourself to find out what sparks joy in you, so you can file those things away to use when you need them.
Yeah, totally. And I never remember who does these TikToks, apologies, but I saw a great TikTok recently about someone who makes lists of those things, and she'll put like how much energy it takes. Like if you have a certain amount of energy, like low, medium, high, whatever, she has categories that are for each energy level, and then each
That's a good idea.
mental health level. So like if you're sad, angry, anxious, all the things. And so then you like plot those things on a, what do you call those? Like a Punnett square? Is that, like the x-axis, y-axis, and
Oh,
it's like
yeah.
like a little Punnett square like that. And so then it's like, if she wakes up and she has like, I am low energy and depressed, then she'll go to that square, and there will be 3 or 5 or however many like things that make her feel pretty good, and how long it takes to do each of them. So she can be like, all right, I'm this and this, and I have 30 minutes. What can I do? And then like, there's a thing there that is made by you for you of things that you like, how much energy they take, what kind of like results they have. And I think that like, that's the thing that you just build as you go along. Like as you find a thing that you like that helps, you can just put it in this big list, and eventually you have a sort of like, you have a system of understanding like your own needs and what meets them. And honestly, nothing can replace like therapy and medication if that's what is required, but those systems work because they are helping you work with your own self-knowledge about what helps you. You can do that for yourself. You may not have a degree, you may be not as informed as a therapist would be, but you know yourself better than anybody else, no matter what. And so there is a lot that you can do to like create a system for yourself, even as you're being denied one by our systems, that can support you, that can kind of like shortcut you to feeling better or more productive or more stable or whatever. It's just kind of like you have to do the work of figuring out which those pieces are that you can self-medicate with. So it's harder, but it's effective, I think, for a lot of people a lot of time, especially if you can't have those other resources.
And it's something that's accessible and free.
Yeah, I love that. I feel like you just gave me a tool. Like I'm like mentally filling it out in my mind. I'm like, I'm too tired to write, but I have an hour, so I'm gonna go bake a cake. Like I can do that.
Yes, and I've been having such a hard time writing lately, and it's like I know what to do. I know how to write. Like I know how to do the thing, but like sometimes your brain just isn't there. It doesn't let you. And like I used to be in academia, so obviously I feel hideously guilty anytime I'm not working, and I have to talk myself out of it. But then those are moments where I'm like, okay, I'm gonna go back through and I'm gonna fill in all my TK notes to myself throughout the manuscript, because I can't write, but I can go back and find the places where I was like, TK, look up street name, TK, name this business, TK, Google, blah, 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 blah. So I can look those things up and I can fill them in, and it'll take me 30 minutes or an hour or whatever. Or like I can look at pictures for inspiration on Pinterest and like make myself a Pinterest board. And those are things that are like writing adjacent. But I still feel like it's having a hand in my project, because one of the things I have is an extremely terrible memory. And so if I go days and days without writing, my real problem is not that I've lost momentum. My real problem is that I've forgotten everything that I already wrote. So sometimes even if it's just like opening up the manuscript and like filling in one note or like changing one adjective, if I'm just getting my own book in my own head, it sort of like it stays permanent longer, and I can be working on it in the back of my mind even while I'm not working.
It's been interesting to me during this last 2.5 years how some authors have been extremely prolific, just like turning out books left and right, and others are struggling where they used to be able to, just like you said, like just write, and now they're like, okay, I know how to do this, why can't I do it? And it's been interesting to see the two polar opposite effects of the pandemic has had on everyone.
Totally. Is anyone just like, no, nothing's changed? I'm really curious if there are any authors out there who are like, it's exactly the same as it was.
Yeah, if there are, let us know.
I was on a panel at Book Bonanza, and it was about writing during COVID, and people were like, how was it during COVID? Was it harder or easier? And I was like, harder. And I was the only person who unequivocally said that it was harder.
Really?
And I was surprised by that too. Yeah, there were like 6 people on the panel. I was surprised by that too. Other folks said, I was okay. And I was definitely not. I was strong at the beginning, and then it really like just, and I feel like, and I had COVID, and you have like there's like the whole COVID brain and like the long COVID, and I'm like, my brain hasn't recovered from like, I never came out of that brain fog.
Yeah.
I mean, I know some people writing is their outlet, like they get through tough times by writing books, and I, more power to them. I'm not I'm not one of those people. I have to be, I don't even know what my headspace is for writing anymore. That's the other thing, like it changed. Like
Mhm.
my zone has moved, and so I'm still trying to find where that zone actually is these days.
Yeah.
Totally.
You know?
Yeah, and it's wild. I think like one of the things that doesn't get talked or I don't see it talked about that much is like how much one small environmental or temporal or like physical shift can totally change your writing life. And I
Yeah,
imagine it's like this for other like artists in other genres or
absolutely.
other forms as well. But like, so my girlfriend's moving in at the end of the month, and I'm very excited. I can't wait to live with her, but I've never lived with anyone in my life. And after COVID and like being, I already worked from home, so like my system wasn't changed at all. It was just like, the world's on fire and no one cares if you live or die. Go write a book, it's cool. But I'm like realizing how much those things change and wondering if like when she moves in, if this will be a whole new kind of like shift of an environmental change, having someone in the space. I am very conscious of the fact that I talk out loud to myself constantly. And now I'm like, oh God, someone's gonna be listening to my like stupid gibberish that I say to myself as I'm writing or like doing anything else. But yeah, it's interesting to think of those things as like, it's gonna change, it's gonna change. So maybe it's about trying to like anticipate the change and like, what do they say, roll into the fall.
Right.
Or
I'll have to
like,
give
you
you
don't
the
roll
same
into Starlight.
advice. I'll give you the same advice I would give our letter writer, which is give yourself some grace. Like there's going to
Yeah.
be a period of adjustment. And so whether you're starting a new job, starting a therapy, starting moving in with someone, whatever your situational change is, it's not going to like magically be okay overnight. Well, it might be, you might be, but chances are it's going to take a period of adjustment. So
Right.
just give yourself some grace.
That is such great advice that I am really bad at taking, but I'm
I
like,
know. That's what I'm telling you.
ugh,
Well, we hope we
well,
gave you some great advice there, letter writer. I wish you'd signed it because I feel weird calling you letter writer, but thank you for your question.
yeah,
No, they're
maybe.
good questions. They're really relevant questions. I think everybody is struggling right now. Like
Yeah,
anybody who says they're not struggling right now, I'm a little
concerned.
not suspicious, but I just hope that, I hope that folks are giving themselves grace
Hmm.
to
Yeah,
um, process everything that's happening, not everything, or process some of what's happening right now.
yeah,
Because we should all be affected by what's happening right now. I mean, just today, like both the Italian and the Sri Lankan governments fell. Like,
yeah, yeah,
what?
yeah.
Yeah,
And then we've got the UK is doing whatever it's doing, and yeah, it's a lot.
yeah. I think it's Sri Lanka, but yeah, there's a lot going on.
Yeah.
Yeah.
On that happy note.
Yep. A lot going on. One of the things that is going on is us still existing, still writing books, reading books, watching TV. I somehow I'm like, I simultaneously, it's hard to write because I'm like, it doesn't matter. And then I and all of us are like, stories are the most important thing. I want to disappear into
Yeah,
stories. And I'm like,
yeah.
I know intellectually that our work matters, but there's a difference between like knowing something intellectually and like feeling it in your
Hmm.
body. And I think that this was actually a really useful conversation for me. So thanks to you both, because I feel like tomorrow when I wake up and sit down to write, I'm gonna remember what we all said about
Yeah.
like stories being the things that teach us about ourselves and about our lives and about possibilities and like make us feel maybe less alone.
Hmm.
Which again is a thing I knew intellectually, but somehow like seeing both your faces and talking to you about it and like seeing the real effect, that is thank you, because that's actually really been helpful to me. Like
Oh,
it's
cool.
changed my feeling about it. So thank you.
Excellent. Excellent.
Well, Kilby, this was such a delight. Thank you so much for being here. Do you want to tell the listeners, where are you on the internet? What most recent or forthcoming book of yours should they read and or pre-order? Give us all the
All the
things.
details.
Sure. Well, I am everywhere at Kilby Blades, or Kilby Blades author, and it's such an odd name that nobody else has it, so you will easily be able to find me. Um, and I'm a letter person. Like I love letters, and my next book is a pen pal romance because I love letters. I love it when people write to each other and explore things in a written kind of way. So my next book, it comes out on September 12th. It's called Looks Good on Paper. And it's about an American woman who loves paper, and she works for this cheesy dating app called Hookups. And she's like so jaded about like men. So she decides, you know what, I'm going to get a pen pal and he's going to be a real person and it's going to be great. So she starts writing to this guy in Italy, and she's writing to this guy named Alessandro, but she does not know that Alessandro stopped writing to her after 2 letters because his English was bad, and that she's actually writing to Alessandro's brother, Nico.
Oh.
So, of course, Hookups gets sold to an even cheesier parent company, and she's come into some money because she was like employee number 26, and she goes on her dream vacation to Italy, and of course she wants to meet her pen pal. So she goes to meet Alessandro, but things go a little bit sideways, and that whole situation has to resolve itself. So I loved writing this book just because I love reading pen pal romances, because before they meet, you get to see all the letters.
Yeah.
And I had pen pals growing up, and I loved writing the letters, and I love this book.
That sounds
That
delightful.
sounds amazing. Oh my God.
Are you going to be
That-
a Polycon? Are you going to a Polycon?
No, I'm going in 2023, not this year.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's okay. Did you ever
okay.
read 34 Charing Cross Road? Speaking of epistolary things.
No.
There's this book. It's not a romance, so it's not actually relevant to your book in any way. But anytime someone brings up epistolary things, I think about this book, which was, my mom really loved it, and then she gave it to me, and I read it in high school. And it's about this woman in New York who corresponds with a rare book publisher or a rare bookstore in the UK, and it's during World War II, and she is writing to them to like order books, because back in the day, you write a letter and order a book from England, and that's how it would go. And
Right.
she over the years strikes up this friendship, like deep friendship, with the owner of the store. And they correspond for years and years and years and years and years. And it's really this like beautiful document of like 40s and 50s and 60s New York and London through these letters. And I won't say how it ends, but definitely worth a read.
Do you remember the Griffin and Sabine series?
Yes, I was obsessed with those.
Yeah.
Oh my God. The images, the art.
Beautiful art. I have them somewhere still. Just
I used to.
unbelievable.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
Ugh. Anyway, okay, so Looks Good on Paper, September 12th.
September 12th.
That's right.
Okay, awesome. And you can find Kilby everywhere at Kilby Blades with the K. It's in our show notes. Yes, so this was really lovely. Thank you both for hanging out with me. And Kilby, thanks for hanging out with us. And listeners, thank you all for hanging out with us three. Remember, send in your letters, because like today, we loved having a letter from one of you.
Yes.
It was awesome. So
we are going to be at a Polycon, all 3 of us, Avery and Roan and I, because I think this airs before then. So stop by, maybe we can take, maybe we'll have like a little box or something that people can slip letters into. How cool would that be?
Yes. Like at Valentine's Day in elementary school,
yes.
mailboxes to put our Cool.
Yeah.
So. And you better give us more questions than you give Danny Levy, who sat next to me and always got the most Valentines. Fuck you, Danny Levy, wherever you are. Danny Levy. Anyway, remember to send us your questions. We cannot wait to give you some questionable advice from this trio of happily ever after enthusiasts. Have a good day, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for subscribing to Dear Romance Writer. Remember to keep sending in those letters at dearromancewriter.com. We can't wait to tell you what to do. Dear Romance Writer is part of the Frolic Podcast Network. Find more podcasts you'll love, frolic.media/podcasts.